we'll just dive in with, tell us what you're working on right now. I see you. I love when I see you popping up in a movie, and I'm like, oh, that's you. Like you will be there.
I love it too. It surprises me too. Oh, hey. Before all this virus and COVID hit, I had been and was working on a Quibi series called Swimming with Sharks. And it was a remake of the Kevin Spacey movie, the successful Kevin Spacey movie with all women. And I was playing a character called Meredith Lockhart, and it was with Diane Kruger and really great cast, Donald Sutherland and others. And we were like 15 days into that shoot, and then of course everything shut down. So everything is a holding pattern, because even just after that, we would have started the second season of Wu-Tang, and that would have been that. Before both of those started, I am co-directing a documentary with my co-director is Whitney Dow, and we've been working hard on that since last year. So that's like almost 9 months of filming, almost, maybe more, and maybe 10 months. And then also doing a podcast of the film. And then also a science fiction series that I started show running 26 episodes of on for a podcast, a fictional podcast. And that's what I was doing before you caught me. It was, with one of the writers, and on the phone, I said, oh no, it's 5 o'clock. And we've been doing that for the past, I guess, 2 months.
How do you, so let's take it back a little bit, right? Like, tell us a little bit about like, what is the thought process like as you're going through these different transitions? So like it is, it may be this stint of this show, and it may be this stint of another show, right? Is it purely working through an agent? Is it you like kind of doing a hybrid of both, where like is a relationship built in some ways, and then people are talking about like, I know who to go, and an agent, like, and then what, as the actress and the writer and producer that you are, and a creative, really, how are you thinking about that, like the overall business part of it? How is that working for you when you're going from thing to thing to thing?
Well, all of my acting work for now, or most of it, I'd say all of it, comes through an agent. I'm at Green and Associates, and I've been there for a while. And they handle whether it's Wu-Tang or those types of things coming through, because of course they're the source. So, people go through them, casting directors or whatever, for those requests and or auditions or whatever. So that's pretty what people expect. The industry standard, you have an agent, they send you out, or they're vetting things for you. The writing, I have to say that none of it so far has come through an agent or a manager, although I do have a manager. None of it.
Awesome, by the way.
Yeah, well, I just end up I've been doing my own projects, or people know me for something, or I've created something with another person and it's a co-creation, or it's just popped off in a unique way, and that's how that goes. And I'm finding that to be pretty successful, because frankly, when people don't know you as, they know me as an actress, but they don't know me as a writer often, you end up trying to, I should say, sell yourself as a writer. You are doing that work for the most part until you break through. And I feel like I've broken through several times, but it's not necessarily something that people come hunting you down for, unless you've done it in a way that they feel like is a true sort of like validation or credibility in their eyes. So I've done, of course, comic books. I got a graphic novel, 2 volumes of it. It was the best American comic. Forbes said it was one of the best graphic novels in America. I have Josh Whedon from Buffy and the Vampire Slayer, and the great Josh Whedon. I've already spun off one of his characters on Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Giles, in a 4-part comic book on Dark Horse. I've writing this podcast now and doing that, and have gone around trying to set up and sell things. The thing is that most of the time with writing, it's so difficult to get anything made that you can sure write a lot, but it doesn't mean that it's found a home yet or is being produced. And often you can sell stuff and then they never produce it. So as a writer, in order for you to get over, somebody usually has to produce that thing into something other people can see, and you can see its value and then track its value, or suddenly it's endorsed because it's out. So it's got to be in book form, film form, something. You've got to be able to show it. But for the most part, until that point, you're really kind of on your own.
It's interesting because I don't think that people view actresses or musicians as entrepreneurs all the time, right? Like I think, but it's so entrepreneurial.
And it is the ultimate entrepreneur.
Yeah,
you're self-directed. No one pays you to be a musician. You get up in the mornings, you practice, you get all that stuff going, you make the band up, you're booking your own gigs, you're doing everything. You go to Kmart and you get hired, you show up and they tell you what to do, and there's a whole system in place. Not for artists. You are an artist and you are a independent contractor, and people are hiring you, and you have to make sure that you have the insurance, and and if you don't move, nothing moves. And that's why I always hate it, especially in a political world where they'd say, oh, just shut up and play, or you're just a celebrity, you're missing. No, I'm an entrepreneur. I am the backbone of what you say America's about. And for one thing, these entrepreneurs often, if they get big enough, like Will Smith, they become huge brands and corporations, and they're supporting other people, crews and production companies and all that. So they can somehow rubber stamp farmers and all these other people as real authentic Americans. But the number one thing we export is culture. And yet the culture makers are seen to be less than. They'll bury us in mass graves if they could, like they did in England. So it's easy for them to dismiss creativity or not think of it as real work. But creative work is real work.
Oh, 100%. I love that. Thank you so much. So tell us about what you're working on in politics, because you mentioned that, and I'm so glad to have your voice there. I mean, just like super thankful for that. And where you just spoke a little bit about like the need for it, really, like the need to. And where are you seeing, like, even with all the COVID things that are happening, where are you seeing that what the voice of creatives in politics might need to look like now in order to be thinking about, because we're going to be the ones supporting the economy. Like the creatives are going to be the solution, right? And so what are your thoughts on what do we need to be doing and thinking about right now from a political standpoint? How should we be moving? How should we be rallying, writing? What should that look like?
We are into the most consequential political period of perhaps in American history, but certainly in world history. That's the truth. We will be saved by our ideas, by our innovation, but also how quick we can pivot, how well we can pivot to inclusivity. And we must now incorporate everyone, not just the top 1% and then all the middle class and all the people talk a lot about people with degrees and all that, but they left a lot of people out of who could change or who was the foundation of America. Well, guess what? This virus has flipped the script, and now we know that so-called service workers are the essential workers, and they have always been there, and they support the companies that other people build, whether they're mega companies or smaller companies. They show up, and if they don't show up, nothing goes. And so the people who have gotten an opportunity to sit home during this time because they either have the means or their job just is shut completely down, like mine, they're seeing out there the people who are still picking up the trash and cutting the hedges and bagging the groceries and the nurses and the people, the thing that makes this world go. They used to always look at those people in those jobs because they were mostly Black and brown and women and poor people and people with less means, or working class as the hoi polloi, people who should be subjugated and need to be told and weren't, oh, you're the backbone of America. But they never really saw this as the entire inner workings. Well, we see who run Bartertown now. Bartertown can keep going without y'all, but can't keep going without them.
Right.
And the thing is, even after a while, they can't keep going without the entrepreneurships and the collaborations that happen at a very top level too. So we're all tied together. I heard somebody said that we're not all in the same boat, but we're all in the same storm. That's true.
Okay.
And that's real. So now I think people need to be asking themselves, and this is not a nonpartisan thing to say, but it is very clear if you start to look at the politics of it, who is working for all of the people. And if our party, whoever they are not working for all the people, how can we change that fundamentally so America works better? Because when America works better, the world works better. So I'm looking at people like Reverend Barber, Bishop Barber in North Carolina. He's getting ready to do the Poor People's Campaign on June 20th. And he literally is trying to tell them if they do not make this next bill shaped more for the poorest people in America, which happen to be 43% of our population in America, then it's a done deal. It's a wrap. And we must not only see them as being inclusive, but seeing as being more than necessary. They are essential. And we can never relegate them to the backseat ever again in life. And so if there's a new American economy coming, it's because we've all had this great so-called pause. But if we learn nothing in this pause, if we really don't learn that immigration and the values of entrepreneurship and the women that have, and the men that, but a lot of the women who have created businesses in their homes and in, just cutting hair, whatever, all the things that we do, don't support a huge part of this economy, then we're done. We're doomed.
Yeah. I think, it really spoke to also the lack of modernization in our government. Our lack of understanding of technology. One of the things, like when people ask me now too, they're like, oh, well, how do you feel about work, feel now? I'm like, I feel fine. I was working from home before. The problem is everybody else is working from home. So
I told them most of the things I do from home till somebody calls me, then I'll go for a little while, do that thing, and then I'm out of work. I'm out of work most of the time of my life. Yes, just like you, absolutely. Yeah. It has changed for some people, but for people like you and others, this is how it's always been, and it's your sweet spot.
Yeah, and that's the thing. So I was looking at Spectrum, the cable company. They send us a consumer report because we're looking at doing some business with them, and so we're looking at a consumer report on like what are the sentiment on what are consumers feeling right now. And interestingly enough, African American people are becoming less concerned with the virus. We're more concerned with how our life is going to change. Americans overall are more concerned with how their life is going to change. But some segments of the population are still very concerned with being infected. And we're now a little bit less concerned about being infected, but really concerned about how our lives will change. And I think that's so interesting because oftentimes the lack of trust for our government as well. Like, I think so these workers, the segment of the population that you're speaking to also has a lack of, well, right now, I feel like we all have a lack of trust for our government, regardless of your party at this point. It is looking crazy right now. But how much our government actually can do? I am, speaking of what's happening in North Carolina, like I am really passionate about people focusing local, hyper-focusing on your local elections, focusing on getting out and getting active locally. I think the money is going to start focusing local because the people who are wealthy and live in a certain place are going to start to say, I want to build up my own area. So organizations like ours just so happen to be in, like Black Girl Ventures, just so happen to be in a great position of saying, we focus nationally, but we do it in a hyper local way. That people are going to start looking right around them to figure out who to work with, who to do things with, who to build up. I wonder what that's going to look like for LA, which is like the center of exporting our culture, in terms of movies and what that looks like. I wonder how the dollars will start to flow, and like how will this affect the bureaucracy of the industry that you're in.
Yeah.
Have, have you seen any effects so far where people are doing any pivots, or studios or
Yes,
production companies are
they have to.
talking different,
Stepping,
acting different?
absolutely. Yes. First of all, I'd like to say that um, if Black people are worried about more, as you say, how their lives will change, I actually think that that's absurd, because I think they should be worried that their life does not change. We have had the
Mm.
short end of the stick so long that if people say we can't get this thing change going now, more better education, more infrastructure, better resources, more health care, better, if we already got what we don't got, we should be worried about what we do get, how their lives change for the better, I say. Not that they don't, it's because it needs to change. Our lives need to change. And so one of the reasons why I think we're not worried about being infected is because there's a part of us that probably expects that we're going to be infected. So might as well go on and get over with and get on with it. And that to me is how we've been dismissed and we see so
Yeah.
small in our lives. Those other people are trying to wait it out because they think that they got something to live for. We've been always expected to die for these things.
Mm.
And that is the thinking, that even inside of this, we're pragmatically thinking, well, let's get on with it, But that's what happens when you take a boatload of people, subjugate them to hundreds of years of slavery, put them through Jim Crow, lynch them like dogs, and just as of yesterday and the other day, shoot them down in the streets while they jog. You think they worried about an infection, a virus? The infection in the virus in America is racism, misogyny, and evil, and straight up the hunting down of Black bodies. So yeah, and then there's a virus.
Right.
It's biblical. Going back to some of the other things you talked about is whether the Hollywood would pivot or not. It doesn't have a choice. It was already being forced to pivot because the studios were dinosaurs. They were being leveraged for decades or since the beginning on an infrastructure that supported racism and misogyny. And that's why people can talk about Oscars so white, but the truth is not Oscars so white, it's agents and managers so white. Look at their rosters if you want to know what they're really about. They always say, if you want to know what a community or a nation cares about, look at their budget.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Yep.
look at where they invest in. Their investment is in very few people of color. They'll get a few, and they'll even get or take a hold of one of the fews that work in really big ways. So, but how many Will Smiths and Kevin Harts and Denzels can we have? Once you get those, then they'll tell you, oh, that's a great actor, but he won't open a movie. So then the other people have to wait till they break through, like Mahershala Ali, almost by magic, for them to be so-called, um, um, what is it when somebody's bankable?
Mm-hmm.
We've been bankable our whole lives. It's so funny that they think that they can sell us with our athleticism, our songs, all around the world. But the minute you put us in a story, oh, no one's going to go see that. They've been buying our culture as American culture since we came off in 1619.
And that's a great, I want to pivot into what you're doing with Color
Pivot.
Farm.
Yeah.
So, because I think what you're speaking to right now is feels like it was a lot of inspiration behind Color Farm. So tell me about, like, yeah, tell us about Color Farm and how it's working and what your goals are there.
Sure. So Color Farm Media is a company that I founded with my co-founder, Ben Arnon. And we call ourselves the Motown of film, television, and tech. And the simple idea was to build a bridge from the street to the mainstream, because we thought that the mainstream got all the, the props and whatever, but they were getting the ideas from the street. How could we make sure that those people who are in that pipeline, that creative culture pipeline, but in storytelling space, could actually get supported in the resources so they could be successful? And could we teach them that outside that so-called mainstream, which was beginning to be the lamestream, always was the lamestream, if this river got redirected in terms of the spotlight in their in their favor, which is becoming the way, because the minority majority is making up the next creators, would they be ready? Would they have enough education in it to be successful? Because film and television and all these things, the stories, is much harder, and I should say harder. It's you're less likely to be prepared for it because it's not taught initially. We don't even teach, the kids come out and they don't even read that much, so it's hard to expect them to suddenly be good writers.
Mm-hmm.
We don't, in the Black and brown neighborhoods especially, we don't get a lot of support in collaboration and partnership. And that's exactly where these things live. In order to do a film, you have to collaborate with others. You have to make deals with others, or at least partnerships. And we're not good at that. We have trust issues because a lot of these people are untrustworthy, or they don't know how to do business, or don't know how to be consistent over time. So we thought at Color Farm Media, we could be able to be that bridge, but also to go inside and say to creators, we are looking for you. Let's get ready to be the next, not the next, but our Shakespeares and our Gandhis and all these people who have marked culture for whatever reason have always been out there. And if Berry Gordy had not gotten his small loan from his family to actually go and make Motown and get Stevie Wonder and Diana Ross and the Temptations, all those people he brought, we wouldn't have that. But the people who took that template and also continued to innovate inside of that were the Def Jams and the Death Rows and all that. I don't like that I'm not saying all of them, but a lot of drug money inside of that, but they were trying to get funding for companies. That's the point. So they could build and that they could scale. And that's not something that happens easily, because somebody has to first have the original thought to write the script. And the script has to be good. Then you have to go and get other people to film it. And then you have to cast people. And then you have to get catering. And then you have to, and that's why when we started off our conversation talking about entrepreneurs or artists as entrepreneurs, is one of the biggest places for entrepreneurship is in the category of filmmaking and storytelling. So that's what Color Farm, we do that.
Have you thought about doing any classes, courses, or like high level, big, like accelerator? I don't know if that's where Color Farm is going, but like accelerator level, like they have some of the writers where you can get it actually into writing, which is a writers program, like some of those fellowships and things like that. Are y'all thinking about doing any of those kinds of things?
Yes. Yes. Yes, you can help, Shelly, if you want to. Yes, because we added that film, television, and tech for a reason. One of the things is we knew that we couldn't go around and do this by ourselves. We needed to scale. We needed to have a way to create a platform, hopefully, to do this. And that's what we've been doing. But imagine now, and I don't need to tell you, because you are so essential. You want to talk about essential. You have done something that no one would want to take on, and it's so magnificent, and it's so benevolent, and it's so you just get a big star from from Harriet Tubman to Malcolm to Martin. You're doing it because
that made me cry.
No, but it's true. You need to be honored for that, because you do it when nobody's looking. You go to Black female entrepreneurs and say that your ideas matter. Not only that, they matter, and I want to fund them. And here's something to get you go. And you pitch, and they pitch to you, and you source out, how can this be better? You make them better by making them step up to the plate and say, what they're doing. And then suddenly they hear it and they go, oh, hey, what is that? That's not only genius and beautiful, that's the work. That is Martin Luther King's dream. He didn't want us to just get our place and have equality. He wanted us to have what they took from us from Black Wall Street and all that, a sense of self, but also not only survival, but how do we thrive? And if we didn't have the backing of all, if it's true that less than 1% of investment goes into Black female businesses, then who's going to do it but you? Right. And you're actually in the trenches. So you are like, to me, a general that steps in and says, this landscape has been torn up. I'm fitting to build houses and stuff, and we're going to get it done. And you just keep doing it. And you should be, and not only should be honored, they give peace prizes, Nobel Peace Prizes to all these people. You are doing the absolute work. Pulitzer, everything should be given to you. Grammy, anything, any award should be given to you. And I just want to say thank you, because I know, having dipped my little toe up in this thing called business, there are no words for how little support Black businesses get, let alone Black females. And it's a shame. It's an outright outrage. Yeah. And if I hadn't known that people like you existed, I'm glad to know that you do. But all I want to do is find a way to continue to make more money and resources to give them to you, so you can, put it out there. Because I feel like that's the real key to our freedom. Not because I feel it's because that's what we were taught. So yes, I have been thinking in that way, accelerators and things like that, because I've been trying to be in those things. It's hard for me, just so I say out loud. People see me as a film and television actress. Some of the things they're wondering is like, why do you need this? I'm like, I need it because I'm trying to, why don't they see me as a student judge me on whether my presentation is good, and then help me get there like you would to be anybody. Not like, oh, does she really, did she make up who we really want to say deserves this? I deserve it because I came from the mountains of Arizona and lived the first 11 years of my life in a hotel called Starlight. So if I made it here, I deserve it. But you'd be surprised how many things, just off the basis of people think you have access to things that won't come to you. Having said that, there's a ton of stuff that comes to me because people know me. So how to balance that is difficult. And I don't want to take a spot from somebody who would need it. But then I often say, but if I'm here, I deserve to be judged by the same criteria. And if I'm asking, I need it. So yeah.
I'm the one with a million ideas. So you got me thinking about all kinds of stuff right now. So we should, because you know what? I never thought about it that way. And so thank you for that perspective, because that is a huge amount of perspective that I don't think people, like, there's so many assumptions made about successful people. So many assumptions. And the idea that you made it to a certain level of success and now that means you know everything. Even when we see like celebrities going back and getting their law degree, or, going and getting into Harvard, there's some type of sucking of the teeth that all of us do, like just as a habit, just like, whatever, they got the money, or they got the whatever, they got like, and I appreciate the perspective of like this world of entrepreneurship. And these accelerators and incubators are offering such a level of expertise and connections in a different world. And I think that's another thing that people don't necessarily see, is that like connections in this world don't equate all the time to connections in this other world.
Well, Shelly, you just said the key thing, that one of the things that haunts us is that we get money as Black people before we get management of the experience of that money. So you see all these people are making money, whether they're athletes or actors, whatever, and then they lose it. Can you imagine if we start to put those things together? Can you imagine? Of course you can imagine, because that's your goal. But I'm saying that one of the things that needs to happen is that it's not, we need money managers for these people. We need to teach management skills of money to these people way before they get it, so they have some semblance of the power of money and how it works, and more importantly, how to manage it if it comes their way. And whether it comes their way or not, how can they manage what they have to make more? No one taught me that going in. And you know what? You see, from Michael Jackson, he went on that last tour. He said, "This is it." That was the name of it. This is it, because he was broke, and that's in quotes. Money always came in, but he spent it before it went out. And he was thinking, I'm gonna get a big pot and deal with it. But the truth is, it would have just gone away. Mike Tyson, fight, get your head beat in, go through all that suffering he did and whatever, and then he loses his fortune. You tell him, yes, we need that dialogue and that help. And more importantly, that type of management to be taught to me. Because guess what? I'll teach it to other people and they'll say, look at how Erika's doing. Beyonce, who's now taken over her life. She went back to get her GED because she said she wanted her children not to see that she completed high school. I wouldn't be surprised if the young woman goes and gets all sorts of other things going, like Serena went and got her fashion degree and all those other things. We need to see our success holistically and not just as one form of completion. And if they got it, they don't need it.
What I think, and what you got me thinking about is, why hasn't anybody created a higher level accelerator for successful entertainment, like in this way, where like, even, because I think, so, and here's another thing that our community does, and so, because you know I'm gonna hit you up about this after, but another thing that our community does is we are constantly thinking about the lowest part of our, and we should do this, right? So I want to be careful about my words, because we should think about all the levels of what our community needs. But I think sometimes we play a little bit small when we're not thinking about, if I did an accelerator, if I took you, Beyonce, and Serena and taught y'all how to run a business, imagine what I could do for my community. You know what I mean? Like, so when you think about it from that level of, and it ain't even gotta be looking at like Beyonce and Serena in that way. It could be anybody in the industry.
No, but it should, but again, I like that at least you said that those people are not precluded because we think they're successful. Right. You're saying, no, it's because they're successful, they're in that accelerator with all the other people in that accelerator. Right. Because they need that business, they need that education in that. They need that experience.
But I love you so much, because sometimes I think, as a person who is the realm that I'm in well known, I don't think of, I may be playing myself too small, right? And thinking that like, oh, you, like, I'm thinking this, what you just said, like, oh, you're successful. You could just go to wherever if you need to, but there's the game. So there's the school, and then there's the game. And those are two different things. So what, like, how you
the game in the school, what do you call game in school?
So the school is, you can go get your official, degree in a thing. You can get your MBA. Cool, no problem. The game is what Jay-Z was talking about on like 444. You know what I mean? Which is like, let me tell you how this works, because these people over here need to move like that. You move like this, and then this happens. You put your money over here, don't put it there, but there's some simple things about expanding into a brand that people also don't know, but the assumption is that you got enough people around you to figure it out, so you'll just figure it out. But there's so many layers to that. Sometimes people don't want that. You want to figure it out for yourself before you bring somebody else in, because when I coach business owners, I say, you don't necessarily have to know the deep levels of analytics, but you need to know enough to manage someone else. So you just,
and there you go. And these people neither have been schooled nor know the game. I know I didn't.
Right.
Didn't know there was a game. I knew there was a school because people see people in business school and talking about it. And I guess that I knew that people talk about the game as a hustle. Like, you got to hustle your money. Like, it's something you can do, like card dealing. But the truth is, the hustle is its own type of school, because it's what you learn by doing. But how would you supposed to know if you have never done and you haven't gone to school? But suddenly you have all the pieces that could really push forward, but you have the fuel, but you don't have the rocket ship.
That's right. Yeah, I think so. It's interesting because I think Now you got me thinking. Now I'm about to be writing up plans. So there's one. There's that. There's also, and it's so funny because I didn't think to text you about this, but I thought of it the other day. And why isn't there a business accelerator that uses film to teach? So like you have all these people's stories, right? You have Bill Gates' story, you have Steve Jobs' stories, you have, but not only the stories, you have Shark Tank. And then you have, you have Flip My Restaurant, Bar Rescue. All of that's business education. But nobody has designed it in a way that says, let's take you through your journey about just watching. Because one of the things about the accelerators and incubators is that we know that the American education system technically does not work for Black and brown folks. So when we keep trying to pull people in and give them this very seminar style, homework style level of education for business, that does not fit. It just does not. If we can't see people, hear from people that look like us, or hear experiences and stories, you actually don't learn. And if somebody doesn't straight up tell you, hey, when you're selling, you tell people the what, you make them pay for the how. Like that simple statement allowed me to shift how I do webinars. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have so much information in my head that I'm always pouring it out. But that pulling that apart just in that way could increase my revenue. So that simple stuff like that, the relationship building aspects and just simple stuff. So yeah, I'm always full of ideas.
It's actually a gift, It is. It's a beautiful gift. A lot of people discount ideas, but the truth is that what comes easily to you and seems almost like you could just probably pop them out all the time becomes very difficult to others. And I'm finding out that I'm a person that's always full of ideas too. My problem is that I can't follow through on all of them, but I need to follow through on some of them in order for any one of them to be successful.
Absolutely. So what could we do for the next thing that's coming out to be there, show up, increase streaming numbers? Like, where do we need to be to get the listenership? Whatever you need, what is it that we need to be doing so people are showing up and there? What's the next thing we should be looking forward to, and how should we be flowing?
You mean for me?
For you?
Well, I'm not. Here's what I'm not, Shelly. I'm not the best person who knows how to manage my own social media presence. To tell people just to simply follow or, like me, or go to Erika Alexander, the Great, and on Instagram or any of those places and find what I'm doing. But also, a lot of what I do is done in the dark and sort of just appears. But I haven't done a lot of the runway work I need for it to be successful once it gets there. So then it's two hard lifts because I'm so focused to try to manage the content by creating it. And it takes all the powers that I'm supposed to have in life, that by the time I turn my head to the marketing of it, the branding, it's almost too late. It's, you know what I mean? And so I think that what people need to be paying attention to with me is, I wish I could say, oh, that's going to be coming out. I don't have that kind of stuff. What we have is, me and Ben and some interns working really hard to get out what we do have. And I can just tell people that I'll keep working to get better, so it's more streamlined and there's much less of a gap in between what I'm doing and people knowing about it. Because I'll do things and people go, I didn't even know you were Wu-Tang. I'll put up a couple of posts and that's it, because I'm too busy doing Wu-Tang.
Yeah.
And I don't know where people get all that time from. I don't, because when I'm not on Wu-Tang, I'm writing and doing other things. So.
Well, let me know how the Black Girl Riches team can help.
Well, that's what I meant to say. So any advice and those types of things is to come my way in terms of resources and how to do it. I really would appreciate it. Okay. I know very much about what I don't have, but I don't know how to even explain it. Somebody could come and look and diagnose me. All I know is that I'm probably not the one to do it. I can have assignments, but only one person can write that script, and I know it's me, so I got to put my energy to that. So how do I manage that when suddenly my world, when I first came in this business, you really could just be the actor, show up and do it, and none of those things were open to you, marketing, none of that. Then suddenly the internet hit and you had to be all of these things, which suits Black people a lot because we do a lot of those things. Like we'll just say, oh, no, don't worry, I'll do the cooking. Okay, and then I'll go and then I'll host the show. I mean, we're doing everything, right? It's crazy, but it's untenable because then nothing gets done to its fullest extent. There's need to be people who are the experts need to be doing that. So then I could be expert at what I'm expert at. Right. You know, and so we should talk. We always talk, Shelly, online, offline about things. I can use whatever help that anybody can give me, but it's a sincere thing to say, I don't know.
No, I appreciate that. I appreciate it. And that means the world to, one of the things about the Black Girl Ventures brand is being authentic, being transparent, being a real person. I mean, we need more real people. So like, I really appreciate that about you and your spirit and just like your levels of, you keep it moving. Like, I know like you'll say all of that, but I'm like, girl, I love it. Every time I see you, I'm like, yeah, she is doing the thing. So like, I empower and encourage you, and like I'm always cheering you on.
And vice versa. You know, I love you.
Definitely here to help in any way that I can.
So the seventh wonders of the world, the real seventh wonders.
Oh, thank you.
That's true. That's true. I can't say enough good things about you. And you're a light too. That's the good news. Is that you're also beautiful to look at. You know, it's easy on the eye. That's a beautiful thing. And that's not a Me Too moment for me to say what's quite obvious, that, you know, that being a beautiful woman is its own strength, and you're beautiful inside and out. But I tell you, when we were so we met y'all in Philadelphia, and we were in a hotel, and I'm from partly Philadelphia, and to have met you there, I always picture you in that, you know, in a booth and us talking and that type of thing. And there was a business convention that was around us, so it was very much sort of a business vibe. And at that time, I thought, wow, people who built America must have sat around just like us and contemplated and thought about it and had little meals and thought about what they were going to do and could blueprint it and then go do it, you know. And that's how it gets done. So much of what we do is about the dreaming and the planning and the scheming of it all. Mm-hmm. But that, I should say, so much of what much of what needs to be done after we leave those spaces is left up to almost a solo vision and very little help, and a difficulty of time management versus resources and all those other things. And we have those conversations. I just wish more of those conversations could be supported by real networks of true funding, true education, and people to steer and mentor. And when we walked out that door, it would be great if we were like at Stanford and there was tons of people to be like, yeah, they've gotten together, and yeah, we believe in these. But you're one of the people creating that space. So I'll always be grateful that I met you when I did, because I hope to be on the inside all the time with you. With you.
Thank you. Absolutely. And like, likewise, also beautiful. Also just like the most super cool, down-to-earth celebrity I think I've met, and I've met a few. So I really like, I always appreciate just being a real person. Can we just be real people? You know what I mean? Like,
so, you know what though? But there's a danger to being real people, because let me put you like this. If people didn't have a character to be, they may not necessarily be the real person people want them to be. So that you might be always seeing the real person.
That's a word. That's a word.
The real person. You just were seeing a character, or you were seeing them inside of a space that, you know, we imprint on people. I think we get disappointed when we see the real person. There's also the fear that the person that they are won't be enough, so they project, you know, put on glasses, and suddenly they hold other thing, and it sets up a barrier, a wall of exclusivity. Because what's the good of putting coach class if you can't pass the people in the front. You want them to pass you to not say hello. Maybe not anymore with the COVID, but you get it?
No,
So
that's so funny you should say that, because I always think this, like when I'm in first class, right? I'm like, this is so crazy that like we have to sit here while everybody passes by us. It's like, and they're standing in line. I'm thinking like, that is so, there's something wrong with that. There's like something, what is that about that we do that in planes? But that's a whole nother conversation. But yeah.
it is, because you think that
Think
either
about it.
board, but they, because they got a board first. But they end up sitting it's a silly thing. I'd rather board last if I was in first class, because
Agreed.
they're going to pass by anyway. They're not going to let anybody put anything in your luggage space. So why sit there? Why not be loose to be free? No, they got to board first. But then you're watching everybody go past, unless it's one of those planes that, you know, they turn left and everybody turns right. But it really is just about how many tiers can we put between that person and that person. So I don't feel common. And I'm like, what you're talking about is there's a commonality that makes the tie that binds. If there's no fear of translating or talking to people and vibing with them like that, you get a sense of community, because in community, we see ourselves in other people. So I think that's what I see in you, is I see a young woman who's smart and who's willing to put herself out there for others in service, but also it's a great idea that I know is bankable. So we can talk. I'm not sitting up here trying to act like I'm something I'm not, because why?
Right. Yeah.
I don't even have that thought, but I'm grateful, because I do know what you're talking about. I run into a lot of people who project a whole mess of things. And by the way, Shelly, if it didn't work, they wouldn't do it. It actually works. You get stuff when you look like you got it all together. They'll give stuff to you for being popular and as opposed to having impact. And we always have this conversation at Color Farm, popularity versus impact. I'd rather have impact any day, but it doesn't win you many fans or favors in terms of how people see you when they're judging who to give that money or support to. So we end up funding things that are popular as opposed to people and businesses and or ideas that have impact.
That's a word. Because, oh gosh, but even with that, and from a business standpoint, and the way people pitch themselves, and sometimes people put the impact first. And sometimes people put the impact in a way where I'm like, you can't give away anything you haven't made any money. So I think like there's this mix of the way that's viewed, where it's like the kind of the distance looks like you're doing some kinds of work that creates more money. Sometimes, when it's actually like maybe not, it's just a look. It's like psychological, right? Like maybe you're not actually doing more work, but the work that you have done to distance yourself has created this look that you have some secret of knowing how to. So because you'll figure it out.
Game, though, to your point, is that the game? Like
that is the game.
Somebody would say Erika don't know how to play the game, and I'd say you're right, because if I thought it worked, as good-hearted as I think I am, I would have played more of that game, because I don't think it would have cheapened me if I could play more of like, okay, let me act like this so I can get that to get where I'm going. I might do it, but it would even occur to me that type of behavior, which I feel like is a sort of distancing and or egotistical behavior, could pay off, but it does.
No, so that is the game. And actually, I've been working on putting out my own leadership course for how you become the go-to person for something. And it's sitting at the intersection of authenticity and this. So like, let's take what you just mentioned about the social media stuff, right? So the ways that people now see people is internal industry stuff, right? Like the way it used to be, where like word of mouth kind of traveled, that you had written a thing, or that your book had done a thing, or that you were engaged in whatever. And now we have this other tool that is also a bullhorn, right? That also says, what? She wrote this book. That also, like people who are talking behind the scenes. The number of stories about me that other people can't tell comes from the kind of stories that I'm telling them about me. But they're telling it without me. Like, you know, I'll give an example of awesome woman who's working at Visa. I met her maybe 2 years ago. You know, she's just one, but I would say there's several of women who are, and this is different across party lines. This is, you know, like this is not about like, this is literally human to human interaction. It's not even about race. It is like, I told this one snippet of my story that hooked on to somebody, and they have been running with that in circles that I don't even know that they're talking about it. Talking about me in. Wow. Because people don't necessarily need to see all the things we think they need to see, but seeing just a little bit, they're like, oh no, I know that this person does that, or they did this, or this, and now we can create all of that with the internet. And that's the difference between like what it used to be. You can get a message across so much more quick than the way you could get a message across before. But it doesn't have to be ego, even though it feels that way because you're self-promoting. It can sit at the intersection of authenticity and I am doing this. Like I am more than one thing. You are more than one thing, and you've done more than one thing and accomplished many amazing things and will continue to, and your diligence and your energy behind it, carrying that impact thoughts with you. So now like we can have somebody else do the work of, well, let me make sure that the things that Erika is thinking and doing, but that does take a dance. There's a dating process to that, to finding that person that can automatically think that way for you on your behalf. I mean, some of it is some of the tools I've been working on is like coming up with the social media matrix so that people can just kind of do that stuff easily. Because there's a limited amount of content, right? Like there's only something that's an image and something that's text and something that's a video. That's all you got. Maybe audio. And then they break down in different ways. But if you come up with what your base content is, you can do that very seamless every morning. You post one thing. Now, I'm not saying you should do that.
no, but that's doable in my mind.
Yeah.
I say, okay, that seems like doable. Already that simple assignment makes me better than I was yesterday or today.
So I think it's such an opportunity right now. And why I think Black people are thinking the way they're thinking too is because we're resilient. We're going to come out of this on top. If we continue to think
on the bottom.
Well, you know, listen.
We always talk like we coming out on the top. I said, but where do we start, you know?
I got you. I see that. Woo. You're right.
No, this is real. It's tearing up. Let's be real, girl. Black people are dying out there.
Yeah.
Dying. We were dying already with everything that we could have on us, you know, in terms of, you know, just what. So I don't know. I just want to go back to something you said, because you're talking about, and you said it before too, about Hollywood and pivoting, and what's going to happen. Since everything is shut down here completely, and there's no way to get on sets, because how can you make sure that everyone doesn't have anything and there's no vaccine? We don't know how long it is before they can get some real filming together. So there's a lot of these Zoom calls going along and people sort of tearing out their hair and wondering what is Hollywood going to look like afterwards. And of course, we started talking about the dinosaurs and how they needed to go because there was an infrastructure that's inherently racist and exclusive. And so goodbye to them. They were going anyway. But then there's this whole other streaming thing that's opened up, and they're owned mostly by the same people anyway. So I'm like, here we go with a whole other structure. But there's a global audience out there now. And the minority will now be the majority culture creator. And they will be streaming out to everywhere, Africa, everywhere, Asian countries, South Pacific, all of that. And right now, there's sort of people trying to figure out not only what that looks like, but what people will want. And if they film, and big arena shows and all the things that used to go with entertainment underneath that block won't start to maybe 2021 fall, then what are we doing? And you got people, as you say, now here's where I give you, you know, your props on coming out on top. Versus the first people who were like, we're going to be doing this on Instagram. Black people, we're going to battle each other and play each other music, and you got all that great stuff going on. And it's because Black people are used to very few resources, and say, well, what we should have been thinking like that anyway. But it took that to get those huge stars to now say, well, it's not less for me to be on an Instagram battle, and I don't need to get paid because look what's happening. Or I am getting paid, but there's different type of sponsorships, and how can that work? And we are really coming into our own in terms of stuff like that. And I think that that's powerful, because there is a real chance for us to start to gain some kind of monetary control over these things. Mm-hmm. But not if they were asking for money and support from the same people who are out there. And that's the difference. Is that we can start to not only have, say, a McDonald's banner on those battles, but a Black business underneath those battles, where they say, yeah, I'll take McDonald's, but I need to take whatever. So people start to have some sort of sense that we don't always need to do everything for the dollar that you're going to get. It's sometimes the investment you give into your community. And since you know you're going to get that type of viewership, then it helps if you wear a t-shirt from somebody that people don't know. And that's we really need to start to do that. We need to do it in earnest, and we need to make it something where we start to hold people accountable and say, hey, KP, P. Diddy, you doing all that. Please make sure your children are dressed in stuff that you can only get if you go to certain stores, and then list them in that dance-a-thon. Yeah. So then
that's the way to use your influence. It's
use it to build our communities.
Do you think that where the music industry has gone, where you can now be independent, you can kind of take over with streams, and they had to pivot in a way? Do you think that we'll see the film industry do the same thing? And I ask that because I think one of the things that people were worried about with the film stuff was quality. Oh my God, it's not gonna look like it's a production from a production studio. People are not gonna like it. And it's like, listen, we're looking at videos every day, all day that are not production level ready. As long as we can hear you well and we can see you okay, we're gonna watch that thing. So I'm wondering,
because it was a tool to use to keep, again, an elite sort of structure up here. But since cavemen drew on walls, we have been doing entertainment with whatever was there. There used to be a campfire, people put out a rug, and people did live theater, or the orator or griot would come, and people would sit there and listen. And they would do that. So we've done all those things, but suddenly, no, we can only do it if we have a high definition, and all these other things are happening, and the special effects are realistic. No, we could have somebody shaking thunder, thinking something for thunder. And if the story's good, we're in. The important part is in this is, you're right. There's certain levels of things that it'd be great to see something, but audio is almost more important than anything. If we can hear it, we can follow along. And if the story's good and the storytelling's great, then you can change the whole temperature in a room. And so we need to respect the fact that Black people often didn't have any sort of apparatus or any things that they were using to tell stories. And yet we told them not only well, we told them better. We did our music and all the other stuff we did from Africa with drums, and we beat on things. And to this day, you go into the subway and people have a can, and they're killing it with, something they got from the Home Depot with buckets. Don't tell us what we can't do with, the few things. It's just that we have to realize that we decided somehow that it wasn't good enough unless we had Gucci. It wasn't good enough unless we had the Mercedes. Why? The same car will get you there. We have to start to realize we always had the powers to tell great stories, because we've always been great culture makers. Why? Because we have a great story to tell. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, the biggest pivot is us realizing that the power was always there, but we were distracted because we thought that if it didn't gain that, we weren't going to get anybody else to watch it. And it was mostly true. Yeah. But you can build where you are, and people will come and see that. And it is hard because you're competing against everybody else. So there's a certain part in your mind you have to think, well, What would I do if I didn't make money? What do I want from this? What do I want this thing to do when it goes out? Do I want it to resonate? Do I want people to remember it? How do I want people to remember it? And then suddenly you can start to play with what you have and make that clay into something that is not only sustainable, but that will span, that when they dig up the earth, they'll see your stuff before they see the other.
Yeah. Yeah.
And by the way, I want to say something real quick about John Lewis. That's my documentary that's coming out. I produced it. We produced it, Color Farm Media, with Magnolia Pictures and Participant Films and CNN. And what we've had to do to release this in the middle of a pandemic is amazing. And it's been its own education, but it's an iconic it's a film about an iconic leader, John Lewis, Congressman John Lewis. And we were supposed to come out at Tribeca and then have all sorts of screenings at the African American Museum in Atlanta and all these places. And there had been all these nonprofits and these educational people who were going to amplify. And now we're realizing, no, it's not going to be the way we thought. And yet this man deserves not only all his roses, but our best efforts to overcome all these challenges, because that's what he had to do when he went across the Edmund Pettus Bridge. And so we're figuring out how to do home screenings and how to get the word out with educational NAACP, UNCF, all these places where they can amplify, but also through religious organization and institutions who would be natural partners for him to see how their congregations can help. We're going to figure those things out, and everyone is figuring those things out. But because he's a person that people say yes to, and very few people say no to, like there's no argument over John Lewis, we have been given a lot of insight into how much goodwill there is out there. Yeah. And I'm hoping that we can take these lessons learned, no matter what, apply them to films even after the pandemic ends, to do the same types of partnerships, because now we're realizing that these partnerships should have always existed and coincided and worked together and collaborated to lift and amplify art and culture.
That's amazing. And just thank you so much for that work. I can't wait to see it. Do you think it will land on like Amazon Prime or Netflix, or are you I've noticed that like what's happened now, even the movies that were going to be released, they're releasing them. Like we watched Trolls, you know, we paid for Trolls, we paid for a couple of the Disney films that they're putting out. I think Issa's new film is going to come out on Netflix. This is like unprecedented. This is like what? Like
I'm happy to pay, but aren't you happy to pay? I don't never buy anything on. I'm happy to pay because we're not going out and buying dinners and our cars and stuff. So $5.99, $12.99 for a good night, and also to make sure that those people are supported. Happily sit there in my room and do it. It'll come out. Our film will come out officially. Right now, it's slated for July 3rd, July 4th weekend. If the theaters are over, then it'll be there, and probably we'll see who comes out. Maybe not many people, especially considering this is something that sort of appeals to an older demographic, or much more people who know him want to come out, and they're not necessarily Marvel fans, although he does have a graphic novel. And then it'll play on CNN on September 27th, because CNN is one of its producers. So it always had a distribution channel. We're very grateful, and ACG as one of our producers. So it even had an international thing. We're less dealing with that than we're dealing with the mechanics of it and logistics of it.
Yeah, I can imagine. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. Like time is like money right now, and I really appreciate you taking this moment to chat with me. And
you know what? There's no, if we're gonna take our last breaths on earth, where else would I be, Shelly Bell, with you? You know. And by the way, people really should look up Reverend Bishop Barber's Poor People Campaign Rally, which will be on June 20th, and try to support anywhere they can. It's not a fundraiser. What it is to talk about the plight of poverty in our beloved community, and also to try to make sure that there are systemic changes now, because people need them now, but definitely in and therefore after, inside of policy and legislation. So please check that out, and everything you can do to amplify and follow it so you can send out art or whatever. I'm doing everything I can to support the bishop and his team, and they're doing everything they can to support the poor.
Okay, sounds good. We'll drop those links in the chat and make sure everybody has an idea and put it under the video so that everybody can click on them later.
Yep. Yep.
All
Thank
right. So
you.
anything else we need to know? You want us to be?
No, we talking. You know me. We talking. Call me if you need me again. We talk about other stuff. It doesn't matter. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
All right. Thank you so much. Have a great night. Stay safe. Stay home. Keep producing. Keep telling great stories. We need you.
Absolutely. And you too. See you, girl.
Good night.